John Doran is with us right now. Hi, John.
Hi, Stuart. How's it going?
No, not bad. How's things with you?
Yeah, okay, man. Not bad. Not bad at all.
Coil. What do you know? What can you tell us? They get some people extremely exercised and energised, don't they?
Well, I guess one way of looking at it, Coil remain one of the real undiscovered groups, I think. They left a lot of chaos behind them after the sad and untimely deaths of the two main members, John Balance and Peter Christopherson. And because of this, there's never been a reissue, remaster. You really have to go some to track down these recordings. But yeah, so Coil, as an actual entity, started to coalesce around the visionary poet and musician John Balance. Around about 1982. But if you want to know what Coil are about, you have to go back some time further. John Balance was actually a precocious schoolboy called Jeff Rushton, who already knew he was gay by the age of 9 and was involved in his own experiments into things like astral projection and occult magic by the time he was 12, so before he was even a teenager. And by the time Jeff was at public school, he was running a fanzine called Stab Mental, and he showed great taste, I think. You know, they used to run interviews with bands like Cabaret Voltaire and Throbbing Gristle, and he used to inundate TG with fan mail. And because of this, he eventually got to meet the group. He was one of about 20 or so people who was invited to the Death Factory space where Throbbing Gristle had the base for the live recording of Heathen Earth. And this is where Jeff met Peter for the first time. And then because of that, Jeff went back to the public school where he was studying, and he convinced his teachers, his music teachers, that Throbbing Gristle were an important bunch of artists on level with somebody like John Cage. And you know what? With the benefit of hindsight, he was right. You know. But anyway, like, imagine this. So you're a student at a school and you manage to persuade your music teachers to allow Throbbing Gristle to do a gig at your school.
Right. So at your public school, your rather prim public school, yeah.
Exactly. You know, so the band came and they said they were interested in the idea, but they'd only do it if they could come and spend the full day with the students and that they could record the whole thing. So if you're interested in this show, it did get released by Industrial Records as a VHS cassette, and I think, you know, if you've got a few quid spare and you like Discogs, you know, you can see what actually happened at this gig. So they were playing songs to these schoolboys like Something Came Over Me and Heathen Earth, and at the end of it, the students, who were in a state of shock apparently, all spontaneously started singing Jerusalem, which was apparently, you know, their way of dealing with what just happened.
Wow.
So, yeah, from this kind of start, this is where Coil formed, essentially. Right. And anyway, the first track I've chosen, it's an outtake, I guess you'd say, from the Scatology session. Scatology was Coil's debut album. Now, why this amazing song wasn't included on the original release is kind of beyond me. It was added to later editions of the album on CD, and it was part of a Russian bootleg cassette which came out. But anyway, this is called Restless Day.
Restless Day, which, as John was saying, John Doran inexplicably left off 1984's debut record, Scatology. Well, the interesting thing is the voice there as well, and on other recordings, you can hear, can't you, the echoes of an English folk tradition in it, can't you, almost?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think first and foremost, I probably see him as like being in an English folk mixed with visionary poet kind of tradition.
Sure.
You know, I really like this song. It speaks of that stage early in a relationship, you know, and like Peter and John were kind of partners.
Yeah.
They were to begin with, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it speaks of that kind of heady stage of love where you can't bear to be separated from, you know, the person you're in love with. And I think there was a lot of stuff going on in Coil's universe at this time. They were kind of very much part of the gay scene, and a lot of their friends were dying or becoming very seriously ill with AIDS and HIV virus. So there's a sense of complete darkness to the music that was made in their kind of quote-unquote industrial period. Now, this changed, I think, when they released the Love's Secret Domain album, and they'd become more invested partially in acid house and rave culture. And there are examples of kind of pretty much straight up kind of techno bangers on this album, The Snow and Window Pane being both of them. And despite being a kind of an ex-raver myself, I feel like the darker, more introspective stuff of Love's Secret Domain is more key to Coil's core. And Dark River apparently nearly drove the whole band completely round the bend when they were recording it. It was the last song to be completed for Love's Secret Domain. Obviously, you know, you're supposed to think of LSD when those words are said out. And it nearly wasn't included. Stephen described the process of mixing the track as hell and said it was a decade before he could listen to the finished record, and he described it as trying to operate on the innards of a squid. They were apparently awake for 3 days straight mixing it because they had a deadline of this expensive studio they were in. But anyway, I think Dark River's maybe an example of Coil producing what could be termed as dark ambient music.
Dark River from Coil's Love Secret Domain album of 1991. John Doran of the Quietus is talking Coil with me. And where should we go next, John?
I was faced with a choice when you asked me to do this programme, and I had to include something from what I guess people would see as Coil's imperial period. Mm-hmm. And there are two albums that people are most familiar with. One is Horse Rotavator. Yeah. I'm guessing that if people who listen to this show are familiar with just one album by Coil, it'll be that one, hence me not choosing any tracks. If you've never heard it, however, you really should rectify that as quickly as possible. It comes, the very strange title comes from John Balance had a very profound vision when he was younger, and that was he was haunted by this kind of image of, well, I'll quote him. Horse rotor was this vision I'd had of this mechanical flesh thing that ploughed up the earth, and I really did have a vision of it. A real horrible, burning, dripping, jaw-like vision in the night. The four horsemen of the apocalypse killed their horses and used their jawbones to make this huge earth-moving machine, hence the title Horse Rotavator. Mm-hmm. I think Coil weren't always full-on productive. They had periods where if they felt that they didn't have anything to express, or if they felt that they couldn't outdo what had gone before, they would start doing other projects. So for example, soundtrack work, and another thing is they would delve off into side projects like Black Light District, but when they were being productive, as they were right at the beginning, you can see that they had good music coming out of the wazoo, you know, as with this track. And next we've got a track called Ether from Music to Play in the Dark 2.
going upstairs now to turn my mind off. 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 To turn my mind off.
Wow, that's Ether from Music to Play in the Dark, Volume 2 by Coil. I was just looking at some of the... there is a limited edition of this record that you can get smeared with John Balance's blood, which is kind of very Coil, isn't it, John?
Well, yeah, I mean, the story behind that, I guess, is kind of quite sad in a way.
Yeah.
There's the special trauma edition
That's
of
right.
these records. What happened in the mid to late 90s was there's a definite shift, as far as I'm concerned anyway, in that drink and drugs. Drugs primarily played a very important role in the exploratory nature of Coil in the beginning. Peter Christopherson said that they were very interested in the potential offered by drugs, but we are not interested in simply repeating these drug experiences over and over again for the sake of it. It's not being done for the sake of comfort or hedonism or any of these things. Now, what happened was, after the band went through an extensive kind of period with MDMA and ecstasy, John Balance started drinking as a means of coping with the come down, and after the band stopped using ecstasy, he found that he couldn't stop drinking.
Right.
And he's essentially like an alcoholic. And I think the latter stage of Coil's career is typified by exploratory and brilliant music, which was made in spite of John's ingestion rather than because of it. There was always a sense of humour right until the end in Coil, and that idea of the trauma edition, you know, is part of this kind of black sense of humour. But anyway, there are very few interviews, relatively speaking, for a band that lasted for 2 decades. There are very few interviews available with the band, and they wanted people to learn for themselves what Coil were about, and the best way to do this was to listen to Coil records in the dark. And this is very much the Ron Sealed series of albums then. These are albums for Coil listeners to listen to in the dark. Ether is my personal favourite, you know. I've got to say that, you know, not that I want to draw any kind of comparison, but speaking as a recovering alcoholic myself, I find an almost unbearable amount of sadness in this music, you know. But still, the way that they utilise John's voice in this track, especially in its closing bars, is just mesmerising. Talking of the fact that there aren't many interviews with Coil out there, I've got a lot of my information on Coil over the years from an amazing book called England's Hidden Reverse by the journalist David Keenan, who undertook a study of 3 bands, Current 93, Nurse with Wound and Coil, and traced their kind of parallel histories. And this book, it really is worth reading if you've got any interest in this kind of occult English underground.
We'll conclude our chat with John about Coil after this, an extract actually, because the full piece is 21 minutes. Remote Viewing 3 from the 2006 Coil album, The Remote Viewer. Remote Viewing 3, an extract of from 2006's Remote Viewer by Coil. John Doran and I have been chatting about if chatting isn't an extremely frivolous and term to use with regard to Coil. Oh, I bet they'd hate that. But we're going to have one concluding piece of music. Set me up about this, John, The Age of Naples and the track Going Up.
Well, I think you can tell a lot about Coil if you look at two of the alternative titles for their debut album, Scatology. One of them was funeral music for Princess Diana, and another was Big Knobs and Broomsticks. So on one hand, you've got this unbelievably transgressive, and bear in mind, we're talking about 1984, the year Diana got married to Charles. It's horrifically dark, but weirdly prescient as well. And on the other hand, you've got a pair of giggling schoolboys with a title that is essentially as British as a saucy seaside postcard. And I think these two things are both core to Coil. So despite all of the sex magic and the drugs and the transgression and the psychedelic exploration and the deep investigation into outsider art, they were also very traditionally British. So in a way, there's no clearer way of putting this across than playing Going Up, which is a track of theirs based on the theme music to Are You Being Served? Now, I spoke to several people in researching this Freakier zone, and that includes former Coil members Stephen Thrower and Ossian Brown, and Michael York, the pipes player who you heard on the last track, Remote Viewer, and loads of other Coil obsessives. And the one song that everyone said that you've got to play it, is Going Up. Now, they performed this at their last ever show, which was in Dublin, I believe, at the Electronic Arts Festival in 2004. And John Balance's last ever spoken words live on stage are included in this posthumous recording of the track. And John Balance died not long afterwards, a fall at home. But I believe that if ever there was going to be, a testament to how brilliant, beautiful, otherworldly and fantastic Coil were, it's this track, Going Up, from the Ape of Naples.
Well, I think given that, John, we should at the end of this simply move on to something else. Let's leave it hanging at the end of this, and I'll say thank you so much for this. This has been fascinating, John. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
That's Coil and Going Up, and thanks to John Doran from the Quietus.